Audio's recording, video's recording. I think everything's working.
Hopefully, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome to the New Media Show. My name is Todd Cochran. Of course, I want to welcome you. And we are post-Christmas, so I hope everyone had a Merry Christmas. And of course, we are now fast approaching the new year. And of course, this is our time, Rob and I's time, to make predictions for 2020. And that said, Rob, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Todd. Great to be back doing the show.
Yeah. So, did you have a decent Christmas?
It was a good Christmas. I did a lot of driving around and going to family and seeing my son from Russia and all that stuff. So it was all good.
Yeah, nice. So it's kind of crazy. Shoko and Chris flew in on the 24th, spent 14 hours trying to get out of Chicago because of weather. If you're going through Chicago on the 24th, yeah, I'm sorry. You were probably screwed on your holiday, but finally got them about 14 hours later in Kalamazoo versus Detroit, and the bag showed up on Christmas Day about noon. So I had to actually 10:30. Actually, the baggage guy, he said he was coming. I said, thank you for working on Christmas. I know it's a pain, but
Oh, yeah.
and he got there. We had some candy for him and some goodies, and poor guy had to work. Well, I'm sure he was getting paid well to work on Christmas, but still, it sucks regardless.
Yeah.
To have to work
It
on
was,
Christmas.
yeah. There's always a certain amount of folks that need to do that, and I tell you, it's nice to have a place to go, a restaurant or something like that on Christmas Day if you're out traveling. So
Yeah. And of course,
appreciate it.
and the first responders and military guys and all those folks are, they don't get often. Many of them don't get a holiday. So anyway, hope everyone had a good holiday with family. And still kind of doing that here too through the first. But anyway, welcome to the show, and we got some stuff to talk about. And
Oh, yeah.
and I actually put together a chart, Rob.
Wow. A chart of what?
A chart, and I think we can talk about it for a little bit. I don't know when we want to introduce this chart, but it was something to do with you telling me that everyone was saying the downloads were dead and they had not talked to you, Rob Walsh, or anyone else that actually knew. Let's be frank. What the fuck's really going on?
Tell it like it is, Todd. Exactly.
So I made a chart. But by the way, if you're watching on Facebook, please say hello.
Yeah. We want to hear from you. Yes.
And we're on YouTube. We're on newmediashow.com/live. And I can't monitor all the chat rooms, but we try to watch Facebook as much as possible. So, I guess before I show my chart, and we'll have to describe it to the listening audience at home, what was your thoughts about the download is dead?
Oh, well, I think I don't know, it's this blend of confusion between just clicking play and what a download is. It's not I guess it doesn't have to be a technical discussion, but when you start making statements that are kind of not accurate, you just kind of have to point it out, and that's kind of what it is. I mean, even though you're clicking play in Spotify or clicking play in Apple, it's still a download, even though it may seem like it's a stream. So it's just being accurate and factual about what you're talking about. And I think people are just confusing the play experience that people are seeing as though it's a stream when it's really not.
Yeah, and I really kind of wanted to, I guess for a better word, do some discussion about that. And this is, we're gonna have to walk through it and talk about it because the audience that's listening is not going to see this chart. Now, let me move this down and get ready to launch this thing. Let's see here. Is this the right? Yeah, this is the one. And let me change the view so I can make sure I've got this. Got to push a couple of buttons here. And I know that's too wide, so let me drag this in. So this is a 72. Okay, what I'm going to show you. Let's see here. What I'm going to show you is a 72-hour window. And this encompasses about 20 million downloads. And what was accomplished here is we took the closest top of the hour from when the file was published through 72 hours.
Right.
There may be a few more hours on this chart because I had the ability to do a range date, and it may not be exact. So if you count the lines and I'm off 24 hours, just move the line a little bit. So what you see is each blue line on this chart represents an hour from the time and this is an aggregate, and you can look at your own show on your own stats provider to determine, what happens with your show in the first 72 or 96 hours. And I've always said that 90% of podcasts deliver 90% of their lifetime downloads within the first 96 hours. And what we're seeing here is a weekday, the first 72 hours of literally thousands of shows. And it's not everyone because we just picked a day and picked, and then lined the hours up and then laid the graph over the top and did just pure, we just ran the totals. There's no averaging here. It's just hour by hour overlaid. And what's kind of interesting is you see this huge spike right off the beginning. And if I go into that detail deeper, that's about 90% podcatchers.
Yep. Those that subscribe.
Those that subscribe. And really the first 2 to 3 to 4 hours is real heavy, as high as 90% podcatchers. And then there's a little bit of intermixing going on as we go out. But it's kind of weird. And I was trying to really scratch my head here. You see this spike, boom, 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 downloads. And you think, what's happening here? But if you look into this big drop where there's 3, you go in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, about 12 hours in, then there's this kind of this leveling out. And really what has happened within 12 hours, the podcatchers are done. The people that are subscribed are pretty much done. But you see this uptick here. And what we think that is, and what it kind of appears to be, is a little bit of a mixed action of maybe Spotify and some other folks that start picking up the show. Because again, this is syndication. Everyone doesn't update immediately. And then really, if you take out that little spike and then you carry that across, you can see that there's this little ebbs and flows, and then it continues to drop off all the way across. So we think here what we're seeing is, in the first 24 hours, about 15 million downloads. Now, let's qualify. I should say everything's a download, but there's really 2 types of downloads. There's downloads that in this first 3, 4, 5 hours is the huge spike of people that are subscribed. They have like 99% of the file gets delivered. And I could go into more detail probably and look at the actual podcatchers that are, consuming that. And I could look at the partial data and see, we could really get granular hour by hour of how a podcast is consumed. But there's still, even throughout these hours in the first 72 hours, you still see podcatchers come in and download the complete file. But you also see an increase in partial downloads. In other words, they've done enough. They've listened to enough of the show to qualify it as a download, but maybe the file is got to the 85% mark or 90% mark, which is indicative of someone that's actively listening and not subscribed.
Right.
So I think just from the pure sense, in the pure sense of the situation, more than 50%, maybe 60% or so of the downloads that happened at least in this sampling, this little small sampling we did of approximately 20 million downloads over 3 days, is that what you really have here is indication that podcatchers are still accumulating for 60, 65%, maybe even as high as 70% of subscribers that content's being downloaded in whole, 100%. You get 100% of the file delivery every time, and then an intermix of that throughout. So I think that we could probably really get super, super deep and really come into some serious weeds here if we really looked at this deeper. But you as a podcaster can go in and look at your own show, look at the spread that you have over 96 hours, then go and look at, set your time hash so that you're only looking for a specific time spread in your stats, and then go look at what devices are consuming your content. You can see yourself exactly how your show distribution is happening. You look at that first 24 hours and say, okay, I had X number of percentage of Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, web browsers. Look that data over. And that first 24-hour window is really kind of this look into your show on how many people are truly subscribed and getting that automated download as soon as you release your show. But it's truly telling here, the first hour, look at that spike, that first hour.
Yep.
It's massive. It's in the first 2 hours. That first hour spike, if we stacked all the third days up, may not get, it might get part of the way there, but it's huge.
And Todd, it's always been like that.
It's always been like that.
It's been like that since the very beginning of the medium. That hasn't changed.
It's always been like that.
Yep.
So when people say the download is dead, and I could take this a whole month, and it would vary a little bit, But I think if I took every episode published for a whole month and just laid that graph, I bet it would even smooth. I would bet it would smooth out. I bet it would be just like this nice, nice ski jump.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, for someone to say that the download is, it's, hey, things are changing. People are actively listening. So we understand that. But the medium itself is largely being delivered by CDNs in a physical download, not using streaming activity. So, and I think the listeners don't care.
Right.
They don't care. As long as they get it, right? We don't care how they get it. We don't care if they click play. We don't click, I want them to subscribe. That's my goal, but.
Yeah, and Todd, this whole streaming conversation versus downloading conversation is really kind of a silly conversation because
it is.
It really accomplishes nothing for the industry to draw these lines. And it's typically these lines are drawn by those that have been living in the online radio world for a long time, where that is truly streaming, and it's usually live streaming. And that's where I'm concerned about is the confusion that comes into this. And I think it's really this click play experience. And if you really think about it, click play has been around the medium for a very long time in web players, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and what we've always seen in the medium is the web players have always been a small subset of consumption of the podcasting content. It's always been on the subscribe side is where most of the consumption is. And like you were saying, there is a transition happening over to more like Spotify experiences where people are coming in and just clicking play. But that's a little bit more like a web play experience. And I think that the jury is still out a little bit on how big that's going to get versus a subscribe experience. I don't know if we have any numbers, Todd, about the erosion of subscriptions. But I would imagine that Spotify may be key to some of that erosion of consumers coming in, consuming podcasts more on a ad hoc basis versus subscribing, and then that type of experience. And that may be the shift that's really the important discussion here, is the shift maybe away from subscription into more just coming in and just clicking play when you want to hear a new episode.
And I my kind of thought on this too is that change is going to happen no matter what. And if, I think you guys put out a chart that talked about it showed the growth, and it showed Spotify growth, it showed the Apple Podcast growth, and Apple Podcast, even though Spotify was gaining market share, the amount of growth happening on Apple Podcasts was much greater because it was just pure volume wise was much greater. So, that being said, and again, we can probably provide the link to the commentary that Rob Walsh did on the feed on that. But the main thing I want to see, and this is the jury's going to be out until we go to pass through, and we're not on pass through yet with Spotify. We've had to implement this. There's these folks creating M4As, so we had to write some code, which I'm in test right now to convert M4As to MP3s because Spotify doesn't take MP3s, and they were doing it internally. And when we we have to provide the MP3 when we go to pass through. So, which is going to add additional confusion because all of a sudden now they're going to have a new entry in their stats. It's going to be an MP3, and they'll see exactly. The beauty about this is we're really going to see what Spotify is doing, because then I can go ahead and apply the logic that we have in our stat, and I can say, okay, how many partial downloads? How long are people listening on Spotify as compared to those people? And we have that data. We have the active play data. We can see when someone clicks play and when someone clicks stop. I can see that partial download data. I don't want to use the word play, but I use the word partial download data. And I know that, yes, there's a little caching of the media head as it's playing, but I'd like to see A/B comparison between someone that's on Overcast or on Apple Podcast or on Google Podcast or whatever device it may be, and where we're losing the audience and in these various platforms. And we'll be able to granularly look and say, all right, Spotify listeners are listening to 86% of the show. Overcast people are listening to 84. Apple Podcasts are listening to 88 or whatever the number may be. And then we're going to be able to, and we'll just break out only the partial data because there's no downloading on Spotify. So,
but there's going to be. I mean, you're on that path, and Listen is now a pass through on Spotify.
But it is a download, but there is no subscribe download. It's only play data.
Right.
It's only active plays. So you're not going to see this huge spike from Spotify within 24 hours or as soon as the show's published. You may see a spike of plays, but you're going to see what you're going to see is you're going to find out how long people are really listening to your podcast on that app.
Well, and that has always been described as a progressive download.
Right.
That's the term that's been used to describe that.
Yep.
Todd is using different terminology here to say active plays.
Active play, progressive download.
Right.
Same thing.
It's the same thing. So I don't want to get people confused that maybe there's something different going on here. Yeah.
So anyway, the jury's still out. So I'm telling Angela, hurry the hell up. I want to see this data so that I can, I can brood on it. And what's it going to do? Is it really going to tell us anything? No. Well, it will. It'll tell us how engaged those audiences are, how long they're staying on, how long they are potentially either getting to the end of the content. Mm-hmm. Are they rolling off? Are they coming in and coming back within 24 hours? We'll see all that. Same as we're seeing now with the other apps. We've already got that for everything else. So it's going to be nice to do some A/B comparison because now I just show it as a 1 because I'm not on pass-through yet. And they just download it, cache it, and, change M4A to MP3 and then send some stats back. And I don't think a lot of podcasters knew. Well, actually, we didn't know that MP3 wasn't a requirement until they said, oh, you have to be on MP3 when you go to pass-through. No one knew that they were converting to M4As to MP3s.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's interesting. This discussion is raising a much bigger topic, and that's what is the future of the medium? Are we pushing our listeners to subscribe, or are we pushing them to just come in and click play? I mean, is subscription processes eroding? Are we seeing a decline in people wanting to subscribe to podcasts? And is that being driven based on the entries of people like Google Podcasts and Spotify? Is that where the future is, Todd? And I think that's an interesting discussion. I know that Apple's showing separate stats and calling it streaming, even though it's not. But they have been using that terminology, and I can see where the confusion has come from.
Right.
And I'm sure you're seeing the same thing.
And I think, too, in that regard, we have to also consider that podcasters in the space today are not, the new podcasters are not, I listen, I listen to 100 shows every 2 weeks, and what do I don't hear? I don't hear them saying subscribe. They say, find me here and here and here, but they don't give them an action to what to do. It's like, go find me on Apple Podcasts, find me on Google Podcasts. I can be found. That's the word they use. I can be found on Spotify. But they don't follow up with saying, and subscribe to the show while you're there. They don't say that. So this is old school folks, OG. Hey, Rob, the OG.
OG.
Hey, Boomer.
That's what we are, I guess.
We're used to saying that. And I listen to so many shows today, and they don't tell their audience, or these new people that may be listening that maybe have just hit play to listen. And I got people in my own office, and we ran through and did a show where we said, what are you listening to? And the diversity of content that my team was listening to blew me away, and then I'm asking them, how did you find shows? What was your discovery method? And then, and I actually should have, we talked about it later. I'm like, how are you consuming these? Are you subscribed? Are you hitting play? And the younger they are, the more inclined they were just to hit play and not be subscribed. They know what they want to listen to. They know the 5 shows that they have to find on Spotify or on Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts, but they're not subscribed. So there is a little bit of a change in
and how people are connecting with the content. And though you can on Spotify, you can kind of like select your favorites, right?
Right.
So there is a little bit of a process there that's similar to subscribe, but it doesn't trigger an automatic download.
Right.
Right. And that's that's really the only difference.
Yeah.
But it is a level of commitment, it feels like to me when I think about it. When your audience goes in and subscribes, it feels to me like that's more of a commitment to the show than just coming in and favoriting something.
So here's a lesson. Here's a lesson, and I just went over to YouTube. I clicked on trending. This baking show has 1,000,001 views right now. And here's the thing that we forget. If it's okay for YouTubers to ask you to subscribe to your channel.
There you go, Todd. Yeah.
What the beep is wrong with podcasters asking them to subscribe to their show?
Right.
This is what YouTubers beg. They beg you to subscribe to their channel. They beg.
Right.
They're pointing down on the screen. They're doing like this. By the way, or go subscribe. And if those of you watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button right now, please. That's what they want them to do. They'd be flashing arrows down at the subscribe button.
Yeah.
Yet we in podcasting subscriptions are dead. How come subscriptions are bad?
Right. I don't think that they are. I think one thing that does kind of get in the way of that is this discussion about favoriting versus subscribe. So some of the platforms have subscribed, some of them don't. Right. So if you as a podcaster say, go subscribe to my show, but they're listening on Spotify, it's not a relevant call to action, right?
It's right. It's true.
So maybe you need to say subscribe or follow my show.
Subscribe,
Maybe
follow,
say-
like, whatever.
or follow or like, right? I hate to say it that way, but maybe you do need to be that descriptive,
You
right?
know. So, but there's no discussion about this on YouTube. There's no debate.
No. Well, it's also a closed platform too, Todd. That's
Right.
the big,
You know.
everybody does the same thing.
But all the podcast apps
Yeah.
are subscribed. Google Podcasts, you subscribe. Apple Podcasts, you subscribe. So maybe
true.
what we need to do is ask Spotify, please comply.
And add
And
a subscribe.
add a subscribe button. You know, maybe that's what we have to do.
I mean, it can be the same process that they're doing, right?
Right.
It can still be a non-download, automatic download experience, but just call it subscribe. Yeah.
And sometimes I think some of these services name things different because they don't want to be associated with YouTube or some other platform, and they don't want to use the same
Mhm.
terminology because that's we're not being original if we don't do that. So I think it just boils down to, at this point in my mind, we just need to get over it, and we need to, we need to move on. So anyway, if it's good enough for the millions of YouTubers, and who wouldn't want to be able to have 1,000,001 watch their video? Now, how many subscribers does he have? He has, this guy got 1,000,001 video views. He's got 6.89 million subscribers. Bank. This dude's making bank.
Those numbers have dropped a little bit, Todd, over the last couple of years, as you know.
Of course. But still, 6.89 million. And this is one, somebody's trending channel.
Right?
Totally.
Totally.
But
Yeah.
I just thought I would bring up so anyway. So you had posted in your Twitter post
Mhm.
something from Neiman Labs. Podcasting finally creates another mega hit.
Well, that was link bait is what that is.
I know it is.
Because that's not what the article was really talking about.
I read the article. I was like, boy, this is.
Yeah.
I think he's on track here. I think he hit the nail on the head. So why don't you give a synopsis of the Reader's Digest version? Dating myself.
Well, I thought it was really interesting that Eric, wrote this article, and if you look at the big picture of it, is that I think that there's been this, this perception in the medium that podcasting was a hit-driven medium, and that comes out of folks that have a perspective of big media, right? Legacy media has always been focused on hits, right? And in a world of content scarcity, right, that's important, right? I mean, you look at movies and television and music; those have been highly controlled kind of ecosystems of content, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those focuses on mega hits, and I think that the example that gets pointed to here is the This American Life and Serial and these podcasts that have garnered a lot of attention here over the last few years, and that we should just assume that every year there's going to be another Serial, or there's going to be another This American Life type of a program that hits big audiences, things like that. But basically what this article says is, well, that just didn't happen in 2019. And I'm just scratching my head. I go, in 2019, this proves what we've known for years, that podcasting does not need a mega hit podcast to grow listeners at an increasing rate. And and that's the bottom line to this article, is that Eric, it kind of dawns on him that maybe we don't have to have a mega hit, but I think he would still like to see a mega hit happen.
Yeah.
Just because I think he just, I guess, assumes that is how this medium works, and I think he's kind of wrong. I think that the mega hits that we've seen in the past are more of a unicorn than they are a common situation.
Well, if you look at Serial, there hasn't been another Serial.
Right.
Serial is a unicorn. Yeah. There's been some shows that have moved. Well, their needle has moved.
Right.
And you look at, and there's some shows that are silently doing incredible numbers. I
Right.
look at 99% Invisible, and I look at shows like that.
They have big numbers.
Oh, big.
Yeah. I know. There's some really big shows out there. There's no question about that.
Big. It's just like, big numbers. And then but they don't have serial numbers. But,
oh, well, really?
Well, Serial had such a massive number. That first version of Serial 1, right. they had mega, they over time. Well, it was a short run.
I mean, that kind of faded. Though.
It faded.
That kind of faded. Right?
But you've got shows today that are collectively, month after month, doing way beyond what Serial has done
right.
collectively. And then
like Joe Rogan is another example.
Right.
He's done like 3 billion downloads in the last 5 years.
So, and then there's lots of shows like
right.
that are big mega shows. And then there's lots of shows that are 40,000, 50,000 downloads, 100,000 downloads. And then the rest of us, that are 10K and below. And that's the 93% of us or 92% of us or whatever that number is. That's 10,000 listeners and below per episode. And we are the podcasting space.
Right.
And we are driving growth. And these tens of thousands of little shows are driving the consumption, the upward consumption. And yet, the media buyers do this to those small shows.
Right.
Ignore them and go after and for those of you who are listening, I held up my middle finger to the screen. The 40,000, the 10,000 download plus shows are all monetized with 5, 6, 7 ads in them.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to the point where I can't explain it no more. I refuse to even try to understand it and why the rest. If they want to get to 1 billion, we can get there next year. That's no problem. No problem.
We have to activate all the ad inventory that's available.
And we don't have to go and those. And we're even throwing the 50% away that don't want advertising.
Right.
The 50% of shows that are listening says, I don't want an ad one. I don't care. I'm talking with my friend, drinking beer in a bar. We're getting some swag. Having a good time. I'm building my consulting business. This is the 50% of shows that are doing great that don't. They don't want advertising.
Yeah.
They say,
and that's okay.
Todd, go away. That's great.
Right. Yeah.
But that other 30%.
Yeah. Right.
We can get to 1 billion. No problem. No sweat. I laugh. I really, really do.
Yeah.
It's too hard.
I mean, Todd, a lot of these things, the industry will finally learn these things. It's just like this mega hit thing, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, the newer people to the medium will finally get it, right?
Yeah.
At some point, right?
Well, we've been waiting.
We've been, in this medium all this time, and we know all these things, right? But it's like, they don't want to believe us or something. I don't understand, but
hey,
know what I'm saying?
Yeah, by the way, Patrick joined the show right when I was showing my middle finger to the screen. He said, that was a hell of a time to join. Thanks for that.
Welcome to the New Media Show.
Yeah, and Marty says, I should know better being a marketer. Part of it's old school and soft pedal it. She's basically saying, very good point about always mentioning subscribe on each show and be specific about it. I just don't want to ram it down their throats. As I mention it and have the links on my pages. I mention it about 5 times during my show.
Right. subscribe.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Christopher, yes, we did have fun in the woods yesterday, but
What?
oh, he was a comment in chat. So he saw
Okay.
he saw a picture of me and my son. We took out. We were out in the woods yesterday.
Yeah. I saw that picture too. That was cool. Let's see.
So
what are you doing in the woods, Todd?
we were looking for jackalope.
Oh, okay.
You know what a jackalope is?
No.
Do a Google. I'm just joking. You're getting a good laugh for anyone that's listening. If you don't know what jackalope is, go ahead and Google it.
It's probably a wild animal, right?
It's a mythical creature.
Yes. Jackalope.
So anyway, no, it's, so anyway, where we were, I don't want to get down the advertising bit, but you want to get to, here's a prediction. You want to get to 2020, fill the inventory into 30%, 30% of shows that are completely being given the bird. And we'll get to 1 billion. There's my prediction.
Right.
And we won't have to have 7 ads per episode. We can have 2.
That's the real problem with this whole programmatic advertising stuff is that shows can make some money, but the problem is they have to run so many ads that it's counterproductive.
Some of it's not programmatic.
I know. Well, that's true.
Some of them are running straight regular RFPs, and they're running 7 campaigns on a show. It's just like good. And I actually did a tick 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 tick. And I had 45 minutes of content and like 13 minutes of ads. I'm like, TV or radio. We got the radio format back in podcast.
Yeah. I mean, and this has been going on off and on with a bunch of networks over the past. I don't know if you remember the Smodcast network. You don't hear that much about them today, but that's the Kevin Smith network. A lot of his shows, he would run like, I don't know if you remember, Todd, he run like 10 minutes of ads and promos at the beginning of every episode.
And so did those people renew, or did they just fast forward to the 10 and the ads didn't get any traction and the advertisers quit?
Well, and I think that the telling sign is you don't hear much about the Smodcast network anymore.
Well, they made their money and got out, right? They got their cash and ran.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah. So when you piss off your audience and you frustrate your audience, some of these shows will do it and say, if you want to fast forward through the first 10 minutes, go right ahead.
They're actually saying that, and they have
right. And I'm like going, hey, wait a minute.
I'd be on the phone with that podcaster. We don't do too much pre-roll. I'd be like, don't you ever say that again, or I'll blacklist you. You will not get another ad deal from me ever again.
Right, exactly. It's like, really? You're gonna really?
See the hammer of Thor back there?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, bring the hammer. Bring the hammer.
Whack that mole.
Oh. We laugh about it, but yeah, we are our own worst enemy,
Right.
Hey, I'm getting $25 CPM. I can run 7 ads. I'm going to tell you, for some shows, that's some money.
Yeah. It is, but you got to run 7 ads.
Well, if they're running 7 ads, some of them are getting $25 CPM for each of those ads.
Right.
So, you think about that, an effective CPM of 175.
Yeah.
And then
per thousand,
and those of you listening, do the math. 100,000 listeners, that's a check. So, so when you get that kind of money,
right,
it makes you really
push the envelope.
Well, people are not, I think some podcasters never imagined in their wildest dreams that they could make $100,000 an episode from their show.
Right.
Or whatever that number may be. And when that type of money comes in, if you have a podcaster that is not, that's intoxicating. Congratulations, by the way. and manage that intoxication and keep the ball rolling. Don't go to 7 ad. Try to breathe and do 3 or 4. Don't overload the show.
But it's awfully tempting, Todd, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it, yeah.
Hey, Rob,
it's tempting to do
this
that.
show, when I was running Citrix GoToMeeting, had GoDaddy going at the same time, run a third advertiser, and that was a check.
Yeah.
That was a check. And I understand how that can become very intoxicating. And how you go, what? You go from 0,
right,
and then you get a check with 5 figures on it, and you're like, that's for a month,
right?
That's quit your day job type money, and you're still doing your day job. You're like,
right.
You're like, I can't tell anybody how much money I'm making, because if I do, my boss will fire me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, and I had an instance like that. Andy McCaskey in Slashdot Review back in the day. He was making so much money with that show. I can't say how much money. He's making a lot of money with that show.
Right.
And he told me, please, 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 please. And he's retired now. So he said, please don't ever say the amount. You can say the show's successful, but don't ever say the amount. Don't ever whisper the amount, because my employer, he worked for a big Fortune 500. They would freak out and say, where's your loyalties, your show or your podcast? And, you're obviously making enough money with your podcast and sign. He was worried about his job.
Right. Sure.
And so he was smart. He kept it on, kept it on the down low,
Mm-hmm.
I've told that story many, many times. So it's, it was just a period there. And, but.
Well, yeah, he had a terrific podcast voice too.
It's fantastic. He had a voice for, oh my God, some serious chop.
Yeah. It's not surprising that he got that kind of success. Yeah.
And he's, it was 5-6 hours of work a day, and he was doing a regular job too. So he burned out. But
he was doing a daily podcast.
Daily. Yeah. Yeah. But I think, that's my prediction, that's number 2.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Rob? Where's your predictions for 2020? What do you think?
I did actually write an article for the Podcast Business Journal on this, and I just think this next year is going to be the year that hopefully we sort out the whole podcast metrics conflict that's been going on. And I think next year may be the year for some changes to the RSS area. And I think maybe next year is the year, Todd, that we try and pull together a podcasting organization of some sort. I'm not thinking that there's going to be anything groundswelling that happens in the medium. I think that the medium has kind of reached a point where we're going to see small changes. I just don't see the big things happening, and I don't even know what they would be at this point. I know if you look at what's happening with with Google Podcasts, I still think that there's huge upside for that platform, and I do know that there's some new entries that are coming into the medium that are going to be offering catalogs of podcasts, and I think we may see that continue to expand. And as you look globally as well, I think the global side of podcasting is going to continue to expand. If you look at what's happening around the world, there's more and more podcasting events happening in Asia and Europe and down South America and those parts of the world. Podcasting is doing very well. So I think global is going to be probably one of the most important areas for podcasting in the coming year. And we could see faster growth coming out of those markets on the listening side than even in the U.S. So, I think we're already seeing the per capita consumption of podcasts outside of the U.S. Grow faster than actually in the U.S. So I think globally, I think that's the big thing that I think we're going to see a continued expansion. And if you look at and it's being driven a lot by Spotify right now. Spotify is growing and becoming very successful at podcasting outside of the U.S. I think those are the big things that I'm thinking about, Todd.
All right, so let's break that down. You started off, I think, talking about hoping the stats stuff would kind of stabilize. And, and I think if there wouldn't be a couple of parties with agendas,
right,
we would be past this already. But what we have is we have a group that is absolutely diametrically opposed to what has been accomplished by the 30-some companies that were worked together from the podcasting space to come up with the IEB guidelines. Yep. It's like Johnny. It's like Johnny come latelys that piss and moan that it's not their way, and because it's not their way, they're going to complain and they are going to try to undermine the effort of what we have worked so hard for. And I take some exception to that. I really do. And there's not a lot you can do about it, but I think that, we had an IB meeting just a week and a half or so ago, talked about some stuff that was going on, talked about the Apple Watch, talked about, reaching out to Apple, see when they were going to get some stuff fixed, because we know there's some duplicative counting going on involving, the Apple Watch has been going on for a long time, actually, more than a year. Right. And, if they're not going to get it fixed, we're going to have to throw the filter on. So, there's active discussions going on about stuff that's affecting the download numbers that are likely going to need filters put on if it's not addressed. So I think that the group is still, as a core, as active, but you got little people nipping around the edges that are impacting the effectiveness and trying to undermine the whole process. And, and they, instead of coming out with guidelines, they've actually set hardcore specific standards. And I think when you do that, you have no chance on this God's green earth of getting adoption. And it just adds more discussion to the, and it gives newspaper writers and gives the folks at Pod News and those other folks places to take swipes at the standard and or at the guidelines. And then you have, sometimes within our own ranks of people that have gotten certified, you have stupid stuff that happens and people having to retract data and readjust numbers. And I just, it's not, doing stats is not easy.
No,
it's really not, with all the factors going on out there, and we do the best we can. And I think, here's the thing that we lose sight of too. What do they use in radio? Diaries and electronic monitoring devices.
Right.
In TV, at least now, they're using the actual, when you click on a channel, it's, you guys do know that you're being reported on everything you watch on your cable box, right? You know that when you're on Netflix and when you're on Amazon Prime, they are collecting everything. They know every minute of everything you've watched, and it goes into a database, and it's being able to determine, how effective any type of marketing they're doing against you is. TV now has got some really incredible data, and they know who you are too. So that's even more crazy. So you look at that, probably TV now is, as far as marketers go, probably the gold standard. Radio, well, but yet we've been continuing to be held at a higher standard than radio, which is dumb. But anyway, that's my point. We continue to be held to a higher standard than almost anyone else in the space. But again, we have people out there that are undermining stuff. Now, what was the second thing you talked about?
Global.
Yeah, global is obviously it's going to continue to grow.
Right.
And, I think we're starting to see stuff coming out of South Korea. We're starting to see gains in, Brazil's been hot for a while. some other countries as well that are starting to pop on the radar. Even since we're starting to hear some stuff out of South Africa. So it's good. Global growth is good, and I can't see it not, because it's a democratization of voice. You don't have to ask the government's permission. Now, if you're in China, you better be careful. Hey, Bob. Hey, Rick.
There's also this aspect of monetization too. I mean, a lot of the advertisers in the U.S. don't want to buy against downloads that are outside of the U.S. So you have that friction that's going on too. So more and more of the platforms are trying to do deals with groups out of individual countries around the world. So, and that's where potentially dynamic ad insertion comes into play, is to be able to do localized ads that are delivered to countries around the world. So that's kind of like another tier of challenge that the industry has around monetization.
But, I had to remove non-US and Canada downloads from reports as early as 2006. So
right.
This is nothing new.
It's nothing new, but how do we get over it is what I'm saying. I mean, how can shows monetize that delivery outside of the US?
It's harder. Yeah, it's harder. And then talk about global growth, talk about stats. There was another thing you had, another tier prediction.
Around the per capita consumption of podcasts outside of the US.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Spotify is helping that considerably.
Right. Yeah.
And it may be part to do with, I know in some countries that when you buy data, oftentimes you will get certain services included for free. So basically, let's say you buy a load and it's a 500 meg load or a 1 gig load of data. Included in that bundle might be free Facebook. There might be free, there'll be 2 or 3 options, maybe some free YouTube. So if Spotify starts actually subsidizing data delivery by paying for the data that people are buying data from in some of these countries where that's how you buy your internet. You don't have a plan. You buy a load of data. That could help as well. But, if Facebook gets in the podcasting game, oftentimes Facebook's subsidizing download data in many countries. So that maybe we'll see a jump in Facebook consumption outside the United States if Facebook actually puts a directory together.
Yeah. I mean, it would be interesting to see them do that. That's for sure. And I could see them doing it at some point, Todd. Can you?
Yeah, absolutely. They want eyeballs and earballs on their pages. They don't want you going anywhere else.
Yep.
So again, I don't care where they consume, long as they know where to go back to Moonbase Alpha to find me. So
yeah.
So we'll see where this goes. But I don't know. It's interesting that the majority of the money in the space right now is really sequestered into a dozen companies, and mostly of our media creating companies. So I don't think that's going to change in the next year either. Time will tell on that front.
Yeah.
Because if you look at, let's be frank, you look at Libsyn, Podbean, Spreaker, us, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of us. Someone throw a couple $100 million at us, buy us all. They could. They could buy us all.
Right. They could pretty much buy the whole podcast distribution.
Yeah, they could buy the whole stack.
Right.
Now, I don't know if they'd want it because we don't own content.
Right.
We're providing.
We're all a bunch of stray cats anyway, right? So how can you corral all of us rebels with a distinct cause into one company, right?
Right.
So,
can you imagine a cat fight that would take place? I just give me my money, I'll retire.
and if you know some of the companies in the medium, to try and see them combining together just doesn't make, it's like, no, I don't think that's going to work.
No.
Yeah.
Right.
it's a good idea. Yeah, not going to work.
And there's people that are more aligned than others. I just think of a couple that I would not be aligned with.
Yeah, just a couple.
Yeah, you think about it. We're friends, but you think about, man, the culture and the philosophy and everything is so different. How and the philosophy is really the kind of the crazy thing too, is because I watch in the Facebook groups, and oftentimes I will go look, and I see someone in there every time, and they're in there promoting a specific type of specific host, and then I'll go into their content and I'll look at their content and what they're doing, and then oftentimes I'm like, oh, maybe he should have disclosed who's his relationships with, because oftentimes I see people promoting stuff, and I'm like, yeah, maybe are you an ambassador? Are you getting paid to promote this service, or the type of content and what type of website they may have or something like that? It is kind of it is an interesting dynamic.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Someone got mad at me for disclosing that he said, we know you work for Blueberry. I said, no, not everyone does. And I said, I've gotten in trouble in the past for saying you should try Blueberry and not disclosing who I was. And then one guy was complaining to me about, we know who you are. You don't have to disclose who you are every time. And I'm like, no, I have to, because if I don't, then it goes the opposite way. So first time I ever had someone complain about me disclosing my affiliation.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
Please, more people say that.
Right. Hey, so I heard that Stitcher now has a new submissions process.
Yeah, I heard that too. I didn't look at it per se. Did you go look at what they're doing?
Yeah, they've got a new website that actually takes you through like a wizard process.
Oh, okay.
Which I think we're also going to see more of here in the next year or two, is simplifications of major task processes around podcasting.
Yep.
This is more catering to the content creator side. I think we're going to see is a little bit more simplification come to the medium as well. Right. Yeah.
So we just released PowerPress and completely revamped our getting started. It's a whole new process.
Right. And it's not about removing capabilities.
No,
it's more about kind of bringing to the surface the basics and then offering links to get to more advanced capability. Because, I mean, as you know, Todd, we have to walk this line between advanced users and basic users, right?
Well,
and that's the challenge.
Well, no, it's not. Here's the simple truth. I have tech support guys are teaching people how to right-click a mouse.
Yeah, that's been going on a long time, though, Todd.
Yeah, for a couple of years, we really had to so we understand that it should be as easy as signing up for Twitter or signing up for Instagram. It's not going to be as easy, but we have to make it easier for podcasters to get started.
Right, and to just drive as much efficiency as we can to these folks, because I mean, if we want to expand the medium, we have to make this process easier to understand and easier to do on a regular basis, because people are busy,
Well, not only busy, but I mean, the horse has long left the stable on tech folks leading the podcasting space. We have creatives coming in. I had a phone call yesterday with a gal that does a podcast festival out of Detroit, and we were talking about where their focus was. And where my focus was on some stuff was, well, her stuff was really, really important about the process of storytelling and process of creativity, all this stuff that I really don't get into, the stuff that we kind of saw at the original PodCon, and I was just like, okay, so what you're doing here is beautiful, but they need the podcast 101 stuff. They need just these basic informations about things that they have to do to get to the point where when they have this creative process in place and they hit publish, that it works well. And we talked about that a bit. And she said, I really hadn't thought per se too much about that. Had some, they were doing some 101 stuff. But for me, I was focused on like the one-on-one stuff, and they're focused on the super creative, which I think is a good blend. It's actually,
yeah, it is. Yeah.
And because I don't know how to teach someone to be a storyteller. That's not but we need people out there doing that.
Right.
We need people out there providing training and courses and how, good processes for creating content. But, because we talked about it again, this is hard, and the more information people have, the better decisions they can make in going and being able to have a successful show.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ownership and some buy-in to what they're doing. Too often now we get calls from people panicking. They're like, I can't publish my episode because my producer quit and I don't know how to log in and do any of this stuff. So, we have to make it, for those folks that are in those types of situations, make it easier for them to publish too.
Yeah, I always advise any podcast creator to learn how to do it themselves. Even though they hire someone else to do it for them, they need to learn how to do it themselves, because sometimes, let's say your producer gets hit by a beer truck,
right.
What are you going to do? So you need to learn that stuff. And the other thing, Todd, I've been thinking about here lately too is, do you think that we're going to see more of these indie apps, these indie listening apps starting to have their own podcast submissions processes versus trying to rely solely on the Apple APIs?
Not a chance. They're lazy.
Okay.
I don't foresee. It's too easy to do that call to Apple. If they do, I applaud them, but I think it's just that Apple's made it so easy to make that API call. What is Marco's the only one that has his own directory? If I remember correctly, Overcast is the only one that has he's not reliant upon Apple. Is he the only? Is he the only app? If I'm wrong, someone please tell me. But I think most of them rely on the Apple APK.
It'd be great if the industry could get behind becoming independent from Apple's APIs. And the reason I say that is because, I know the Apple folks are listening. There may come a day when Apple, decides that they don't want to be the public source for all their competitors.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know that day is coming anytime soon, but it's always in the back of my mind.
So that, maybe I shouldn't even say it, but we have you saw who joined the RSS Podcast Coalition, right?
No, I mean, who? Are you not going to say, or?
I don't know if he wants me to say, but we have some serious visibility going on inside that group right now.
Mm-hmm.
So people are starting to pay attention to. There's no.
I think I know who you. Okay.
There's no discussion going on right now. We're still ingesting people in the middle of a little bit of talk, but we've gotten this attention of some players. Well, I shouldn't say players, but people that we respect and love in the space. I guess that's the best way to say it.
Right.
So
very, very well said, Todd.
Well, we do.
I know. It's not like it's disingenuous.
Marty says people who get into this medium with podcasting need to understand the process and do their homework to understand the entire connections and step-by-step and process with podcasting. So many don't. Marty, you would be shocked. It's probably 90% don't. In 10% that really care. And I might be wrong there. Mike would probably say, no, Todd, it's more like 50-50, but sometimes it feels like, that people are really disconnected from the process. And I understand they love to create content. They just don't want to do the other part of the guts. And that's why there's so many people that are out there doing consulting and doing production. And, that's booming right now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So I was going to look and see if there was anything else happened major in the news here. There was a little bit of discussion going on Pod News about ratings and reviews and how they're a non-variable or insignificant variable in the Apple Podcast ranking algorithm. think we've known this for many, many years. But once again, it's been rehashed. Here's your chart. Your chart made it into. How come I didn't even see this earlier? So let me see here. Can I blow this thing up?
You're talking about the Lipson chart that Rob pulled together?
Yeah. So let's see. Where am I going to put that? I'll put this. I don't want it to be. Why is that? Oh, it's a weird format. Save image as. Copy image address. Now let me load it. There we go. So I can get a full page on this. Apple Plus. And now let me bring it full screen. Okay, so how each platform grew in 2019. So maybe you can describe the chart here, Rob.
Well, it's actually pretty simple. I mean, if you just go through and you look at the percentage of growth compared to where each of these platforms are, and it's going to look a little weird because, I mean, Google Podcasts is up 281%, but it's one of those things that going from 1% to 3% makes, or something like that. It's even less than that, I think. It just shows a big percentage increase, but it does show you where the growth is, even though the overall numbers may not be significant or substantial. I mean, if you look at the 13% growth of the Apple Podcasts versus the 281% of Google Podcasts, the 13% actually figures out to be more listeners.
So for those of you listening, Apple Podcasts saw 13.1% growth in listeners, 13.1% growth, which equaled 44.5% growth in total listens.
Right.
Whereas Spotify had 106% growth and 39.5% in total listens, where Google Podcast had 281% growth, but yet only attributed to 7.5% of the listens. So, and you look at, here's something that's really amazing. Stitcher, 26.4% of growth, but only 2.9% of total listens. And it's still, that's so sad. They were at 7%, yet they just can't seem to break above 3. And then it goes into Castbox, which was 18.2% and had 2.2% listen growth, 11.7% for Overcast, 1.9% growth, 1.9% total. So, if you look at it as a whole, we had some serious listener growth in 2019.
In two primary places, Apple and Spotify.
Right.
Right. Which basically accounted for about 85% of the total growth.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so those of you that love Spotify and are only promoting Spotify, well, you just gave up a potential growth in your audience of 44.5%.
Right.
Think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
So if you are only promoting Spotify, which some shows are, you've given up. Not 45. If you're only promoting Spotify, you've given up 44.5% on Apple Podcasts, 7.5 on 51, 54, 56.2, 57, almost 60% of potential listen growth because you're not promoting these other platforms.
Right. And also I think a lot of Spotify's growth is on Android too.
Right. And those are like woohoo. Those are like really fresh.
Right. Exactly. And I think you look at what's happening to Spotify versus Google Podcasts, and you can see a little bit of a battle going on between those two companies on the Android platform. And you can see Spotify's winning the battle so far.
Now, let's go back, and the 800-pound gorilla, the silent giant that is crawling out of a hole of nothing. You look at Google Podcast. to come to 7.5%, that should get some people's attention.
Yeah, I think it's great growth for that platform.
It's
no
great
question
growth.
about it.
Great growth. And
because I think that it's still been only like 1 or 2%, right?
Right.
Overall.
Yeah.
So growing 7.5% isn't a huge growth number, but I just think that, and Todd, you feel the same way. There's so much upside to that platform.
And yet 90% of shows never mention them.
Right.
They have no way for their subscribers to even know they're on Google Podcast.
And I think Google has some work to do still. So
no,
to get there.
Google has done a lot. The podcasters
No, I know
haven't.
they have.
The podcasters are.
Yeah, but
I'm gulping my word.
I mean, I hope that. I think that the bigger picture there with those folks is they need to have a better connection with the podcaster, and I think that's the big thing. And I think they realize that, right? And hopefully we'll see changes along those lines.
Well, I think they're not super accessible even to me, whereas Apple is. If I have an issue, anyone on my team has an issue, we almost, Mike, myself, and Angela are the three primary people that talk to Apple. They will. I may not get a same day response, but I get a response really quick within a couple of days.
Right.
And if I send Zach an email at Google, it goes into a black hole. I never hear from him. So I have to round him up at some event. I have to corner him. So there's no one at Google that I can get an easy response from. Spotify though, bam, same thing. I got a rep that will respond the same day.
Well, Todd, I think what's going on there is I think that the podcast team at Google is still small. And
this podcast team at Spotify is pretty small too.
Spotify and Apple are much bigger teams.
Well, that's true. Comparatively.
And I think what we're going to see at some point here is Pandora come into the picture here, and I don't know what their impact is going to be, but it could be fairly significant.
Well, the Pandora folks are responsive too, and
right. They
got good leadership over there, in my opinion. So I think they're adjusting course, and it's taken a little while, but Pandora's
it's the
also
same thing
mostly
with Spotify. It took like 3 years for them to get their stuff together, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But as Rick just said in chat, truth, for maximum coverage, you should be promoting them all. So I know everyone on this show, listen to this show. We pound it into your skulls, and a lot of you are, you're shaking your head. Yes, 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 yes. You're like what are the bobblehead dolls? Yes, 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 yes.
Right.
Or maybe sometimes no, 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 no.
Yeah. Hey, Todd, another thing that bubbled out this past week, and it is about how the rankings in Apple don't affect the charts, right? The reviews.
Yeah. I talked a little bit about that.
That kind of stuff doesn't impact that, and it's something we've known for a long time. But it's just funny how these things keep coming up.
Sometimes people think they do, but it's because these shows are so big, they're getting a lot of reviews. And it's because, it's because they're getting new subscribers and new listens, and Apple sees the consumption going through the Apple Podcast app, and, and yes, it can be gamed. We know that I don't know if they got their code fixed. I know they were working on it. They've been working on it a long time, because I was told a couple of years ago that they were working on fixing the gaming, but I don't know if it's been fixed yet or not. I know they've been pretty heavy-headed on people that have tried to game it and have gotten caught.
I mean, I know one thing that Apple should work on trying to fix is the acceptance and display of ratings and reviews across country, different countries, right? I mean, if you go in and you try and access a U.S. podcast in the Australian catalog, let's just give an example. Those ratings and reviews in the Australian catalog aren't the same as what's in the U.S. catalog.
Well, I think I don't think they're ever going to get a total fix for that because those are separate stores.
They are, but they're coming out of a common source in the database, though,
Well,
to go into those stores.
but at the same point, I think it's the same infrastructure they use for movies and for music. So because of country restrictions and all that, I think that's I think podcast was kind of hedged in the early days.
Yeah,
you
right,
know,
totally.
and so it's all like this, and I don't think the only way they're really going to be able to do that is to separate it, and I can probably think about the long meetings that would be required to figure that out, how to make it just one catalog. I don't know that they would ever do that though.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be done, but you're right, Todd. I mean, I addressed these issues when I was working on Zune at Microsoft because we were talking about expanding into international markets, and
Yep.
I wanted it to be based on one catalog that had IDs in the database that would assign a particular content creator to a country, right? So there's two IDs, one that would be country specific, and then one would be master catalog, right?
Yeah.
So you could map a show to different countries, which Apple is doing. Apple is displaying a lot of US content in these other catalogs, right? So you should be able to do it in the database. But you're right. I mean, if the infrastructure was built early, it's a big task for them to do that, to merge that data, right?
Hey, one thing I forgot to mention earlier, we have been invited to do a live new media show at the Detroit Podcast Festival. And if I actually named the festival wrong, I apologize. But I told them, I said, we'll get some dates and I'll talk to you about it and see if we can make it happen. But
what? Oh, so you don't have any dates?
Yeah, they're still trying to wedge stuff in between everything else going on in the podcasting world. So sometime in either July, late July, I think. So that potentially.
Yeah, because I mean, we're booked to do a live new media show at Podfest down in Orlando, and then also at Podcast Movement in LA coming up here.
Aren't we on standby for Podfest? We're not guaranteed yet.
No. We got placed the first day at lunchtime.
Okay.
Right.
All right, that worked.
Yeah.
The first full day or the pre-day?
The first full day.
Okay. A little sad news, the company called Oxbus, which was a big fan of these guys, is for sale. Dan Radlin over there announced, he says, we focus too heavily on building a great product while not focused enough on building a great business. And so it is for sale over there. And they did have some investment money, so I don't know how much they're going to want, but it's basically a production suite.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Oxbus, and they were at Podcast Movement and in July, and so it's once again we've got sometimes great products, but it's a company. You got to pay employees and you got to make salaries, so you have to have users to do that. And
yep, got to build a business too. You can't just live off of venture capital.
Yep. There's also an announcement that Google is supposedly working on a coming soon, kind of maybe a history tab, so you know what you've been listening to, a play queue, so you know what's coming up next, and auto downloads. And apparently this was first spotted before, but 9 to 5 Google has worked out how to enable some of this stuff. So there's an article on that.
That's interesting.
Some stuff that is maybe in pre-release and kind of been hidden a little bit. So Google Podcasts is in work.
Well, hey, those guys want to make their platform succeed. That's the impression I get.
The British Podcast Awards and Welcome have announced the 11 successful recipients of the Pulitzer Award, sharing £50,000 of funding for podcasts, or maybe is that euros, that drive conversation around public health. So 11 shows sharing, what's that, about £4,500 each. So interesting. What else?
I know we've got some events coming up. The next one for both you and I is CES.
Yep.
So,
And what, I've got to get a hold of that schedule. Because my schedule's already filling up. So I try to get over there on Monday and hang out. I don't have a pass or anything. I guess I have to buy a pass, or can I get in with my CES badge? Or
I would imagine you can get in with your CES pass. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because I don't think I can pick that up. Yeah, probably. I guess I have to ask.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know either. I show up over there and say, "Oh, you need a ticket."
We can just sneak you in, Todd.
Oh, okay. That's great. I'll just walk in like I own the place. Haha.
Right. Well, if we think back to digital Hollywood, I can see how that might happen.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm just looking through the news and see if there's anything else that has really kind of popped this week. It's obviously slow news week because of the Christmas holiday and everything. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
But
I'm sure things will pick up here after the first of the year.
Yeah.
Get back into that.
And what's interesting is in years past, we've seen like this surge of tickets that come in right even through Christmas. But this year, knock on wood, probably
it hasn't
jinxing
been big, right?
Been kind of quiet. And you're thinking, is everything, you actually go on and is everything working, and making sure your ticket system is online, and, and you're just these little things that you look for. But yeah, it's been kind of quiet over the holidays. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but it's nice to have a little bit of a breather,
right?
from the ongoing onslaught.
Yeah, that's true. And I am going to go to the iHeartRadio Podcast Award. That's on my agenda.
Sorry.
I can come back and report on that after I get back from that.
Hey, tell them, the podcastawards.com website can be had. They want to be official. They can, make, you tell them you should go over there and buy that website. Just drop the, they got,
drop the hint.
Drop the hint. They got lots of money. That might be my retirement plan, Rob. Sell that domain.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they show up with $1 million.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah. Hell yeah. $1 million. It's sold. and no podcaster.
How fast would that be sold, Todd?
And no podcaster in their right mind would blame me, Oh, you sold out. You gave it to iHeart for $1 million. Yeah,
Todd,
I did.
What's wrong with you, Todd?
You traitor.
Yeah. Drop the hint, Todd. I'll just drop the hint.
Yeah, just drop. Say, hey,
Okay.
I know this guy.
You can actually claim it accurate that you would actually have the first podcast awards if you bought the.
They did.
If you bought it.
Yep, they became the owners. It would be the first and original podcast award.
Right.
Matter of fact, all the trophies are sitting in my studio here. They arrived on the 23rd, I think. So and then between now and before I leave for Vegas, I think I've got 44 trophies to ship.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. And
that'll be expensive.
Yeah, and the credit card bill and matter of fact, I told him, I said, I need to get this bill paid before the end of the year. I got to get it off the books, and so I got the credit card charge on there. Now I got to get it paid so that I can zero that account out for the year and not take a big hit from Uncle Sugar. The last thing I want to do is pay taxes on something that doesn't make any money to begin with.
Right. It's true. Nothing worse than that. Oof.
Actually, it is. It's horrible when you've got a bill that's going to basically clear all the money that you've earned, because it's not supposed to be this money making event. It's supposed to come out pretty dead even. I think this year we may be up $500-600 or something. But I'll take that. But I don't need $8,000 sitting on or $9,000 sitting on the books that I have to pay taxes on.
Yeah.
Because yes, then someone can have podcastworks.com for $500,000, not $1 million. Yeah, I'm just being silly here, but it's true. I don't need to pay taxes on that. Anyway,
It's still amazing, Todd. I go to podnews.net and I click on the link of jobs that are available
huge
in the podcasting space.
Yeah,
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
It Voxnest is hiring 2 people, a content and community manager, product marketing manager. That's surprising.
I have 3 new people starting January 6th. So we filled all our positions we are looking to fill. So
right, I just look at all of, and there's even a job lead software engineer for Glow in Seattle.
Wow.
So
interesting.
Vox Media is hiring a podcast marketing manager.
Well, one thing's for sure, Rob, if Blueberry ever goes out of business or, I may be able to find a job.
There you go, Todd.
And don't start any rumors. That's not happening.
I'm sure, Todd, that you could get hired as the podcast editorial manager for Deezer in Dubai. I think you could jump on that one.
As long as I can remotely work from right here, I'm good to go.
There you go.
I am not going to Dubai.
You're not going to Dubai. Okay.
They got a job opening for.
Right.
They got a. I've been to Dubai. No, I'm not living in Dubai.
Okay.
Have you ever been?
But it's warm there, Todd.
Have you ever been to UAE?
I have not.
Dubai's nice.
I know it's nice.
But I'm not living there. No, I'm not.
Okay. Sounds good.
My days in the Navy when I had to go to the Middle East were involuntary.
Todd, you will go there. Yes.
Oh, yes. Get on the airplane and you shall go to this country. Right. Now I have a choice of the countries that I wisely visit. Actually, Dubai's nice. Yeah, it's not. And there is much worse places to be than Dubai. For sure.
So next week for the show, we're not going to be doing it on Saturday because you're going to be flying to Vegas.
Yeah, so we're going to do it on January 3rd. And we'll figure out a time on Friday to do it. But yeah,
I'm going to be flying down to Vegas on Sunday, so I'll be down there just after you.
Definitely no show on the 11th because I'm not back from Vegas either. So the next show we'll do next week on the 3rd, and then we'll be back to regular scheduled programming on the 18th. But yeah, nothing, no way. I just can't see us. Me doing it. CS doesn't end until Friday anyway, the 10th.
Right.
So then I actually fly back to Michigan on the 12th. So, and then I'm in Columbus on the 13th. So it's crazy busy time. All right. Anyway, I've got to go to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I got an appointment with the University of Michigan to take my son there. Even though I'm a Michigan State fan, he wants to see the campus, and it's Christmas, and nothing's going to be really open, and plus, we've got beer to drink tonight at midnight. So
there you go.
Everyone, thanks for being here and listening to the show. I'm Todd at blueberry.com. Follow me at Geek News on Twitter, or, of course, Todd Cochran on Facebook.
Rob Greenlee, and I can be followed on Twitter at Rob Greenlee. And you can reach out to me if you want. Send me an email, robg@libsyn.com. Happy to talk with you about podcasting. And have a Happy New Year.
And yes, I have a Happy New Year. And yes, we were asked to put a banner up on the monitor in the bottom. We've complied with that from a listener request. So everyone, thanks for being here. Thanks for the suggestions. We do have a donation link on the website page at newmediashow.com. And we do have our sticker exchange still going on. So send a sticker, get a sticker, or actually get a little care package back from us. The address for that is, again, on the newmediashow.com, and subscribe to the podcast or on your website. Everyone, thanks for being here. We'll see you next time here on the Geek News Central New Media Show. Everyone take care. See you next time.
Nice little plug.
Yeah, bye.